Well, hello everybody, and thank you for getting on today's call. I'm very happy you guys could be here for our first ever training webinar here on 3D Mail. And so we're going to go through this, and we're going to talk about some of the insider secrets I've seen with 3D Mail, some of the stuff that I've seen our clients do the best. And so we're going to get started pretty much right away here, and we're going to get going. Just so you know, we're going to start with a few basics here. And I guess before we get going, I guess I should introduce Keith. Keith, are you on the phone as well?
I'm here.
Awesome. Like most of you know, Keith is my father and the guy who I run 3D Mail results with. So he'll kind of be chiming in every now and then, giving you another voice to listen to, so I just don't drone on for 60 minutes here and throw in some insight and maybe ask any questions if something is unclear. So again, we're going to jump right in. We're going to start with a few basics here, and then we're going to quickly move into some advanced stuff as we move on. So as we move ahead here, the thing to keep in mind is, if my screen will advance, hopefully it will, if you have any questions, they should be an area for you to type them in. So go ahead and, if you have any questions as they come up, feel free to go to the little GoToMeeting thing there and type them in, and we'll get to them at the end of the training. So that way we can get all the information that you guys need, and then if you have questions at the end, just be sure to stick around at the end, and I'll be sure we go through and answer those. So we're going to get started here. But it's sad but true that in any business, great marketing and mediocre ability will outperform great ability and mediocre marketing every time. Now, that maybe isn't the way it should be, but that's frankly the way it is. And so today we're going to show you how some of that great marketing can really help you guys out. And I know most of you out there, and in fact almost all of you, probably have a great ability, great product, great service. So when you combine it now with great marketing, you're really going to see your results increase. So my question for you is, and this is a question I usually ask with a live audience, so it's a little different today, but my question usually is, how many messages do the average American see in one day? And the answer, the most updated answer that I've seen here in the last few years is 3,500. And I know that may seem like a lot, that may seem like way too many, but if you just think about all the signs you see on the way to and from work, all the radio advertisements you hear in the car, all the TV advertisements you hear, all the email you get, you can see how quickly that number adds up. And quite frankly, that 3,500 number, that's probably even a couple years old now. My guess is we're over 4,000. I don't know about you. I get hundreds of emails a day alone. So that right there, and almost all of them are trying to sell me something. So you can see how quickly that adds up. So I really do like this next picture. That's a picture of Times Square, obviously, on a busy night. And just look at that picture. Look at all the signs you see. Look at all the billboards you see. I mean, you can see, 3 or 4 taxi cabs, a couple buses. Those are littered with advertisements. So if you think about it, 3,500 actually may be lowballing it a little bit. So if you take 3,500, I have a typo in there, 3,500 messages times 365 days a year, you get 1,277,500 messages per year. Now, that's pretty overwhelming. So how do you cut through the clutter? How can you make sure that your message is seen? Can you spend $5 million for a Super Bowl ad? Sure. That'll get you noticed. That'll cut the clutter. But I don't know about most of you on this call. I certainly can't afford a $5 million Super Bowl ad. How about $1 million for the last episode of Oprah? That took place a couple months ago. Again, I don't have $1 million to spend. Would it be a good way to cut the clutter? Would I get a lot of eyeballs? Definitely. I would certainly get a lot of clutter, bust a lot of clutter, and get a lot of eyeballs. But quite frankly, the vast majority of marketing you see doesn't work for the small business owner and the entrepreneur. What people mainly see is large brand-building image advertising. So they see Nike swooshes. They see golden arches. They see the Coca-Cola brand, if you will. And frankly, that doesn't work for those of us who don't have a $50 or $100 million advertising budget. It just doesn't work. So what we're going to talk about today is some of the marketing that does work for the entrepreneur and the small business owner. Those of us who don't have $50 or $100 million to throw it a Super Bowl ad or to throw out a full-page ad in the USA Today. We're going to talk about some of that stuff today. And so my question for you is, how do you stand out? How can you be remembered as the one in 1.2, almost 1.3 million messages? And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. So my promise to you is before we're finished here, you'll know how to be a 1 in 1.27 million marketer. So I hope that sounds good to anybody. Anything to add in there, Keith, before we get going?
No, other than, the reality of the situation is here that as small business people, that is our number one thing that we need to be doing now when it comes to marketing. We simply, well, not simply, in addition to having a great offer, a great list, and things like that, we've got to do something to stand out. It wasn't like that back in the 40s and 50s or whatever. If people got 1 or 2 things in the mail or whatever the case may be, certainly not like today when you really need to stand out. And then how do you do that and do it affordably, even in a smaller market, maybe not a Super Bowl, but how do you really target people, and then after you target those people, then make your message stand out so that they actually do see it and read it and spend a little bit of time with it.
You bet. Very good. Very good. So what we're going to do here is before we get going into some of the real nitty-gritty, we're just going to go over, again, like I said, a little bit of 3D mail basics, and then dive into what I call the S&D section, the swipe and deploy. I'm going to show you a handful of examples of stuff you can use and take home right away. So here's just a small list of the industries I've seen 3D mail work. So it's a pretty long list there. So you've got entrepreneurs of any kind. This may come as a surprise to people, but direct mail and especially 3D mail works for people who think they're only online. Because let me tell you, online is just another way to sell something. It's not a business model. So you'll see a lot of people moving. A lot of the big hitters in online marketing are now moving offline and using direct mail.
Yeah, I'm going to comment there, Trav, if you don't mind. That was maybe not a huge surprise to me, but it was when I see the people that you talk to on a daily basis over there, and most everybody on this call, if we were to mention their name, you would think that they were online people and maybe online people only. The reality is those people understand now, a lot of them didn't for a while, understand that they really need to do it all, just like all of us. We really, when it comes to marketing, we need to do it all. We need to not do this or that. We need to do it all. We need to test it all.
You bet. You bet. So we also have small business owners of any kind. Here's that fourth one down is people in a B2B environment. I get on almost, I shouldn't say almost everyone, but a lot of people will call in and challenge me. The B2Bs will say, well, that only works in consumer marketing, and the consumer marketers will tell me that only works in B2B marketing. So today I actually have a couple of examples of the exact same thing someone used in B2B and B2C, and that'll make sense as we get closer here to the kind of the S&D section of the presentation today. Sales professionals, obviously, professional practices like doctors, dentists, chiros, lawyers, accountants. I have a handful of examples today. One of them is from a chiropractor. I have stuff for authors and speakers and consultants, information marketers, and then last and certainly not least is people planning to start a new business. So that's the list I came up with in about 30 seconds. I could probably double that list if I spent a couple minutes more thinking about it. But it really is proven to work in just about any industry. In fact, any industry I've ever worked in, it can work if done correctly. And we're going to talk about how to do that stuff correctly today. So what is 3D mail? So again, normal mail is flat. So if you think about it, you get a regular old postcard in the mail, you get a regular old envelope in the mail, and there's not much to it. It has length and it has width. 3D mail, it has length and width and depth. So 3D really does say it all. Others have called it lumpy mail. Others have called it dimensional mail. If you've been around the direct response marketing world for any amount of time, you probably have seen one or both of those terms. It all means the same thing. And so the biggest thing here is that it doesn't look like anything else in your mailbox. That's the biggest thing that differentiates us from any other kind of, quote, flat mail, is it's going to look and feel different than anything else, and that's a very important thing. So what is 3D mail? It can be an envelope with something in it. So you can see there's a picture of socks. We've actually mailed socks in the mail before. So you put socks in a 6x9 envelope there, and out the door they go. That's obviously something very different than what they're used to getting. Here's one a lot of you probably have seen before. We send out a little worry doll. I don't have an example of a worry doll in this presentation today. I have an example of something similar, so we'll get to that as we go. But again, it can be something even little tiny like a worry doll, but again, it allows enough lumpiness then to get it to make sure that it looks and feels different.
Yeah, and I'll comment on that one. It sounds like you're not going to talk about it too much more, is that, that's a great one for postage too. Even though it's certainly lumpy, but it's not so lumpy that it bumps the postage up. Is that right, Trav? You know more about postage than I do, but
yeah, it does bump it up a little bit, but only to standard postage. Well, not if standard postage is 64 cents. This is only 64 cents. So what's great about this one is
64.
Yeah,
is that 44 and 64.
Yep, is that it's very, very inexpensive to add this, but it does increase the response significantly, and that's what we're looking for. We're looking for increased response and increased ROI, and we're going to get to that as we move on a little bit here. So it can be things we put into an envelope. It can be things that don't even go into an envelope, and this is an example from of one I have later in the presentation. So it can be an actual pill bottle that you actually put through the mail. It can be a message in a bottle. This is another one we're going to show you a little later. So again, this doesn't go in any sort of envelope. It doesn't go in anything. We actually just drop this right in the mail, and we'll get into more depth on this one. And then, of course, our most popular one is the bank bag. And again, I have this one ready to go as an S&D example here at the end of the call as we move forward. So that's what 3D mail is. As you can tell, it obviously looks and feels very, very different than anything else you're getting in your mail or anything else your prospects, clients, or patients are getting. And there's another one that we're going to show a little bit more in depth later on this call, is the treasure chest, and we're going to show that one as well. So according to Better Homes and Gardens, the first thing people do when they get home is open their mail. And if you think about it, what does your routine look like? If right now my wife is a stay-at-home mother. However, she goes and gets the mail, and what's the first thing I do when I get home? Well, I go to the kitchen counter and I look at the mail. When we were both working, it was, whoever got home first, the first thing we did, walk out to the mailbox, walk inside, look at the mail. So, that the vast, vast majority of people out there are going and looking at their mail first as soon as they get home, which gives us a tremendous opportunity to sell something if we do it right, if we stand out, if we look different. So you've got to do what I call is get your mail into the A pile. And we have three different types of mail. We have A pile, we have B pile, and we have C pile. And you want your mail in the A pile. And so what's in the C pile? Well, pretty obvious with that graphic that's up there now. It's trash. It's junk. It's obvious junk mail you don't want, you don't need. So maybe it's one of the, if you're anything like me, the 6 credit card offers you get in a single week, or whatever it may be. The bottom line